Hi everyone, it's Emmett from Pi My Life Up. In this video, we'll be showing you how to install Home Assistant using Docker. Home Assistant is one of the go-to pieces of software for automating your home. Thanks to the huge number of developers that work on both Home Assistant and its various third-party add-ons, it is able to talk with and control various smart home devices. Docker is a great way to host Home Assistant as it makes it very easy to set up and allows you to run other software rather than dedicating your entire machine to Home Assistant. Before you get started with this tutorial, you will want to set up your device with a static IP address. The best way to achieve this is to use DHCP reservation on your router. Alternatively, you can set a static IP for your system itself. However, there are some caveats to this. If you're interested, we will link some guides below. This tutorial on installing Home Assistant with Docker will have a focus on Linux-based systems such as Ubuntu, Debian, and Raspberry Pi OS. Once you're ready, either open the terminal on the machine or SSH into it remotely. The first thing we want to do is ensure we have a nice updated operating system to work off of. To start this process, update the package list by typing in sudo apt update and pressing enter. If prompted, don't forget to type in the password for your user to elevate to super user privileges. Our next step is to upgrade any out-of-date packages by typing in sudo apt upgrade-y and pressing enter. Our next step is to install Docker onto your machine. If you already have Docker installed, you can skip the next few steps. Otherwise, we will now want to ensure that curl is installed to your system by typing in sudo apt install curl-y. We will be using this tool to grab and run the Docker install script. This script is essentially what allows us to easily install the latest version of Docker. Most operating systems package repositories often include a significantly out-of-date version of Docker. This can cause various issues, especially when trying to write a Docker compose file, like we will be doing shortly. Now that we know curl is installed, we can now run the install script by typing in curl -s L https://get.docker.com /. With Docker installed, our next step is to add our current user to the Docker group. This will allow us to manage our Home Assistant Docker installation without needing to elevate to the super user every time. To add your user to this group, type in sudo usermod -a Docker $, and then user all in uppercase. To ensure this change to your user's groups is read by all the other programs on your system, restart your Linux device by typing in sudo reboot. Once your device is restarted, we can now begin the process of setting up Home Assistant using Docker. The first part of this process is to create a directory where we'll store all of Home Assistant's data as well as the Docker compose file. You can create this directory by typing in sudo mkdir -p/opt/stacks/has. With the directory created, change into it by typing in cd/opt/stacks/has. At this point, we can begin to write the Docker compose file for Home Assistant and the 3 other pieces of software that we'll be using. The first of these pieces of software is Node-RED. Node-RED is a fantastic automation tool that integrates beautifully with Home Assistant and makes automated tasks significantly easier for its visual-based scripting. We'll also be setting up Mosquitto, which is a lightweight and efficient MQTT broker. This broker acts as a messaging service so that Home Assistant can easily send and receive messages from sensors and other pieces of software. A popular piece of software that relies on MQTT is Zigbee to MQTT. This converts Zigbee signals into MQTT messages that can be read in by Home Assistant. The final piece of software that we'll be installing alongside Home Assistant is VS Code Server. With this, you'll be able to easily edit the configuration files for Home Assistant without ever leaving your web browser. While not required to use Home Assistant, it does make things a lot easier when you have to quickly troubleshoot something. Now begin writing this compose file by typing in sudo nano compose.yaml. One important thing to note is that you need to be mindful of the spacing in this file. Indentation is incredibly important, so please replicate it as we have in our own file. Start off this file by defining a new list of Docker services. To do this, type in services followed by the colon symbol. Let's start off by setting up the Home Assistant Docker container by typing in Home Assistant : Now first we'll want to assign this container a name. Do this by typing container underline name :space Home Assistant. Next, we need to point it to the Home Assistant Docker image by typing image :space ghcr.io/home-assistant/home-assistant stable, and then a double quote. By specifying stable at the end, we are ensuring that we only grab stable releases of Home Assistant. Next, we need to define some volumes. These volumes map data to your actual drive and allows it to persist between Docker restarts. Define a new list of volumes by typing volumes followed by the colon symbol. Define our first volume by typing -config:/config:/config. This volume will ensure that Home Assistant's config files will persist between each restart. Next, we want to map the local time file from our system to the Docker container by typing /etc/localtime :/etc/localtime :RO. The RO at the end of this line basically tells Docker that this volume is read only. Next thing we will want to map is the dbus. By mapping this, we will allow Home Assistant to interact with various devices on your main computer, such as Bluetooth. To mount this, type in -/run/dbus:/run/dbus, then and RO. Next, we will want to ensure that Docker automatically restarts Home Assistant if it ever crashes. To do this, all we need to do is type in restart: "unless-stopped." Next, to help prevent issues with Home Assistant interacting with your various devices, we'll make the container privileged by typing privileged:"true." Next, to help with device discovery, we'll be setting this particular container to host network mode. This means the container will share the exact same networking space as your host machine. Set this mode by typing network_mode:/host. With the Home Assistant container now all configured, our next step is to define the Node-RED container. Start this process by typing node-red:. This should have the same indentation as when you typed in Home Assistant at the start of this guide. Next, let's give this container a name by typing container underline name :node-red. After that, we can point this container to the Node-RED Docker image by typing image: space node-red/node-red. Next, we need to define a new list of environment variables by typing environment followed by the colon symbol. The only variable we need to set for Node-RED is the time zone, which we can do by typing -TZ followed by your TZ identifier, which in our case is Australia/Hobart. If you don't know what your TZ identifier is, we'll leave a link below. Next, we need to define some ports to open from this container by typing in ports:. Define the first port to open by typing in -1880:1880. This port is used for Node-RED's web interface and API. Now we need to set up a volume for Node-RED to store its configuration files and data. Define a new list of volumes by typing in volumes followed by the colon symbol. Underneath this header, type in -./node-red:\data. As we want Node-RED to only start when Home Assistant and Mosquitto are available, we will want to specify a list of containers it depends on. We can begin this process by typing depends _on followed by the colon symbol. Set the first container this depends on by typing -space Home Assistant. Next, make Node-RED also depend on Mosquitto by typing -space Mosquitto. Next, to make sure Docker automatically restarts Node-RED if it crashes, type in restart colon symbol followed by unless-stopped. We can now move on to setting up our third service, which is Mosquitto. Define this service by typing in Mosquitto followed by the colon symbol. Just like the other services, we want to give this a name too by typing in container underline name colon symbol followed by Mosquitto. Now we can point it to the Mosquitto image by typing in image colon symbol eclipse-mosquitto. Just like with the Node-RED container, we will need to set the time zone. Define a new list of environment variables by typing in environment followed by the colon symbol. In this new list, type in -space TZ followed by your TZ identifier. We now need to define a new list of ports to open by typing in ports followed by the colon symbol. Next, we want to define two different ports to open. The first, type in -1883 :1883. Next, type in -9001 :9001. Both of these ports are the ones commonly used to talk with the Mosquitto MQTT broker. We now need to define a new list of volumes by typing in volumes followed by the colon symbol. We'll need 3 different volumes for Mosquitto, one for the config files, another for its data, and finally one to back up its logs. Without these volumes mounted, this data will be lost every time your Docker container restarts. Define the first volume by typing in -mosquito/config : On a new line, type in -/mosquito/data :mosquito/data. Finally, for the last volume, type in -/mosquito/logs :mosquito/log. Now ensure Mosquitto is automatically started by typing restart :unless -stopped. We can finally define our final component for our Home Assistant Docker setup by typing in code-server followed by the colon symbol. Like the others, give this container a name by typing in container_name :symbol followed by code_server. Now set the image for this container by typing in image followed by the colon symbol followed by lscr.io/Linux server/code-server :latest. Next, define a new list of environment variables by typing in environment followed by the colon symbol. Underneath this, we'll need to set 2 different variables. The first of these can be defined by typing -tz equals followed by your TZ identifier. Next, we'll want to set the default workspace by typing in -default underline workspace =:config. This will ensure VS Code starts in the /config directory we are about to mount as a volume. However, before we mount this volume, we need to ensure that the VS Code port is open by typing in ports followed by the colon symbol. Underneath this new header, type in -8443 :8443. Finally, define a new list of volumes by typing in volumes followed by the colon symbol. Underneath this, we want to define a single volume that maps the Home Assistant config files to VS Code. To do this, type in /config followed by the colon symbol, then /config. Finally, ensure this container is automatically restarted just like the others by typing restart :unless -stopped. At this point, we are finally finished writing the Docker Compose file that will set up Home Assistant and a few crucial services. Save and quit by pressing Ctrl+X, then Y, and then Enter. Now before we can go any further, there's a few other things we need to do before we can start Home Assistant using Docker. The first part of this is to configure Mosquitto. This software requires a configuration file to be written before it can actually start. Create the directory where this config file will sit by typing in sudo mkdir -opt/stacked/mosquitto/config. Now begin writing Mosquitto's config file by typing in sudo nano /mosquito/config/mosquito.conf. Start off this file by typing in persistence_true. This allows data to persist between restarts of the MQTT broker. Next, we need to set a location to store this by typing in persistence_location /mosquito/data/. This directory exists within the Docker container and not our host system. We must also set a location where log files will be stored by typing in log onlinedesk /file /mosquito/log/mosquito.log. Next, we need to tell Mosquitto to listen on the 2 ports that we defined within the compose file. Do this by typing in listener /1883 and then on a new line, listener /9001. Finally, allow anonymous interactions with this MQTT broker by typing in allow_anonymous true. With this all written, save and quit by pressing Ctrl+X, then Y, and then enter. By default, the Mosquitto container we are using will use a user ID of 1883. This means we need to ensure that this folder is owned by this user ID. To start this process, create a group with this ID by typing sudo space group_add space -g space 1883 space Mosquitto. Next, create a user that uses this new group and the ID 1883 by typing sudo space user_add space -u space 1883 space -g space 1883 space Mosquitto. Finally, take ownership of this Mosquitto directory by typing in sudo space chown space -r space Mosquitto :/ /opt/stack/hash /mosquitto. Now we need to kind of do the same for Node-RED as well, but a bit simpler. Start by creating a directory for the Node-RED data by typing in sudo space mkdir space /opt/stack/hash /node-red. Now take ownership of this directory for the user ID 1000 by typing sudo space chown space 1000 :1000 space /opt/stacks/hash /node-red. All of what we have done here is basically to ensure we don't run into permission issues with both Node-RED and Mosquitto. Finally, we can use Docker to start up Home Assistant and the other services we set up by typing in docker space compose space up space -d. The use of -d at the end just tells Docker to detach from the current terminal session once it has started. This process can take a few minutes as the Home Assistant image is fairly large. With the Home Assistant Docker container now up and running, we'll want to access its web interface to finish setting up the software. To do this, open up your favorite web browser and go to http:// followed by the IP address of the machine where you're running Home Assistant. In our case, this is 192.168.0.8. After that, type in : then the port 8123 and then press enter. You'll now be taken to the onboarding page for Home Assistant. To begin this process, click the Create My Smart Home button. On this page, you want to fill out your name, a username and a password that you will use to access the Home Assistant web interface. After filling out your details, click the Create Account button. After this, Home Assistant will ask you to set your home location. This will allow it to get your local weather information as well as provide support for proximity-based automation. After setting your location, click the Next button to proceed with setting up Home Assistant. This next screen will ask if you want to share any of your usage data with the Home Assistant team. This is entirely up to you. Once you have decided what to do, click the Next button to proceed. At this point, Home Assistant is at least now up and running. It will list a few devices that it has automatically found in your network that you can already configure to run through Home Assistant. Now proceed to the Home Assistant dashboard by clicking the Finish button. Now there's a few more tasks we need to do before we have finished setting up Home Assistant with Docker. First, let's make Node-RED and VS Code easier to access by adding it to your sidebar. To begin this process, click Settings in the sidebar. In the Settings menu, find the option labelled Dashboards and click it. On this screen, you want to now click the Add Dashboard button in the bottom right corner. Next, you want to click the option labelled Web Page. To start this off, we will be adding Node-RED. To do this, type in http:// followed by your IP address, followed by the colon symbol, and then the port 1880. Once done, click the Next button. Now set a title for this dashboard, which in this case will be Node-RED. Next, set an icon. We recommend that you use MDI shuffle -variant. Next, toggle the admin only option on so only admins can see this within the dashboard. Finally, click the Create button to finish setting up this dashboard. Now let's repeat these steps, but this time to create a dashboard for VS Code. Back on the URL page, type in http:// followed by your IP address and then the colon symbol, but this time use port 8443. Once set, click the Next button. Let's give this dashboard the title VS Code. And next, let's set this icon to MDI wrench. Like Node-RED, also set this to admin only. With everything set, click the Create button. At this point, you should now see Node-RED and VS Code shown within your Home Assistant. Clicking either of these will take you straight to them without having to leave the Home Assistant interface. Our next step is to get Node-RED to actually be able to talk with Home Assistant. To start this process, click your profile in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Now change to the Security tab. At the bottom of this page, you'll see a heading labelled Long-Lived Access Tokens. Click the Create Token button. Now give this token the name Node-RED and then press the OK button. You'll now be shown a unique access token. Copy this down as you will need it to configure Node-RED to talk with Home Assistant. Once you have the token copied, click the X button. Now we'll want to navigate to Node-RED by clicking Node-RED in the sidebar. The first time you open Node-RED, you'll be given this welcome screen. Click the X button to ignore it for now. Now within Node-RED, click the hamburger icon in the top right corner of the screen. Within this menu, click the Manage Palette option. Next, swap to the Install tab. Using the Search Modules text box, type in Node-Contrib-Home-Assistant-WebSocket. You should see an add-on using this exact name shown within the search screen. Click the Install button. A pop-up will appear on your screen. You will need to click the Install button again. Once this add-on has been installed, you'll want to click the Close button. Next, use the Filter Node search box to type in Event. You should see a node called Events All. Drag that onto your screen and then double-click it. On this new page, click the plus symbol next to the server option. In the base URL box, type in http:// followed by your IP address and then :8123. Then, in the access token box, copy and paste the token you got earlier. With this all done, click the Add button to finish adding Home Assistant into Node-RED. Next, click the Done button. To ensure all these changes properly stick, click the Deploy button in the top right corner. If the deployment was successful, delete the node we added earlier by selecting it and hitting the Delete key. Once deleted, hit Deploy again. With that all done, we finally have Home Assistant set up to talk with Node-RED and vice versa. Our next step is to configure the MQTT broker we installed with Docker alongside Home Assistant. To start this process, click Settings in the sidebar. Next, click the option labelled Devices and Services. Now, click the Add Integration button in the bottom right corner. With this menu open, use the search box to look for MQTT and click the first option. Next, you'll need to click MQTT again. Within the box at the top of the screen, type in the IP address of your machine. In our case, that would be 192.168.0.8. With this all done, all we need to do is click the Submit button at the bottom of the screen. If you see the Success screen, you have successfully connected MQTT to your Home Assistant installation. At this point, you finally have Home Assistant up and running using Docker. Alongside Home Assistant, you also now have Node-RED, VS Code, as well as an MQTT broker. This should be more than enough to get you started with making your home smarter. If you found this tutorial to be helpful, be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Until next time, have a good one.